Yo, I'm Bob. Into Marvel, happen to be totally blind since birth, talking about Spider-Man, the animated series, season 2, episode 2, or episode 15 of the entire series, if you'd like that better. This one's Neogenic Nightmare, chapter 2, Battle of the Insidious Six. It premiered on September 16th in 1995. So there are spoilers ahead. If you haven't watched this decades old episode yet, I'd advise you to watch it before you watch the review. That being said, jumping right in, and you were warned. So this episode, of course, picks up right where the last one left us hanging. And I would see this one when it premiered. I would see, I think, the entirety of the Neogenic Nightmare Sans Ravages of Time, which is part two of the Tablet of Time duology later in the season. I'd see all of these sans one episode when they premiered because, I mean, it was one heck of a season. I did not want to miss any of these. And when the episode starts, I love that you don't go right to Peter. You're with Aunt May, and she's being told that Peter is in good hands. He's being taken care of. Meanwhile, you see you see Doc Ock trying to thrash him. And Peter doesn't have his powers, of course. He's trying to best the Insidious Six with no powers whatsoever. I think he does get his hands on one of Mysterio's holocubes, but it is to no avail. He is eventually nabbed, and then you get that scene where Kingpin is talking to Silvermane. Silvermane is still being a giant jerk face to Kingpin. Well, that is, I think, from Kingpin's perspective. I think both of these characters are very unsavory people. And you've got Kingpin providing proof that he has captured Spider-Man, and he orders the unmasking to commence. And Dr. Octopus gets to do the honors. So this guy, man, he's living pretty. He's going to have a big science lab to do his experiments in. He's going to have unlimited funding. He gets to unmask Spider-Man. Otto's having a great day. And of course, when the mask comes off, I love Ock's reaction. Spider-Man is Peter Parker? And then we go to like 2 minutes of commercial. Well, we did when this episode aired. Like I said in a lot of the X-Men episode reviews and the older Power Ranger episode reviews, you'd get a minute or so a show, and then you'd get 2 or so minutes of commercial. But I would not dare leave the TV because I didn't want to miss anything. So I'd make sure to have cereal or whatever it was while I was watching Spider-Man or X-Men or MMPR. And whenever you went to this first commercial break, man, I was always parked right in front of that TV. I figured when I watched this for the first time that Peter was going to be able to verbally rectify the situation because, I mean, he's Peter Parker. He's got a big brain in that head of his. But of course, you have the villains kind of doing the work for him because when we get back from commercial break, Peter is, well, understandably horror stricken. He's like, "Oh, I've lost. I've failed Aunt May," and then you have Doc Ock trying to figure out what in the heck is going on here, and he's like, "Okay, it all makes sense now. You couldn't find Spider-Man, and so you decided to come in and rescue your aunt because when I fought Spider-Man last time by myself, and we get this flashback and Doc Ock's talking about how formidable he was, nearly invincible, all that stuff, and he's just, this is working to Peter's favor here because this is keeping his identity a secret. And I like the way they did it, though. I would imagine they probably surprised the heck out of some people when they went to commercial break. I was thinking they're probably going to figure some way out of it because I think one of the main things about Spider-Man that I think keeps a lot of people interested is, his identity. His identity is a secret. He always gets himself into situations in which he's late for dates or class or whatever, and he's got to come up with some way out of it. I was thinking he was probably going to be fine. And of course he is. I mean, nobody believes that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and I like that he doesn't have any powers, so the story is, more believable. And I love Peter's reaction when Doc Ock is like, "Nah, he's not Spider-Man." Peter's like, "I'm not." So you have Kingpin and Silvermane. Silvermane is just, I think, itching for an excuse to boot Kingpin out of the I don't want to call him a family, the organization of crime lords. I feel like Silvermane has had it in for this guy for a long time. Even though he says at one point, "To think I used to admire you," and now you've captured a defenseless old lady and you're strong arming her weak nephew. I don't really know if Silvermane ever did admire this guy. I feel like he's a bit envious of Wilson. I think, of course, it's because Silvermane is, well, I would imagine he's, according to everyone else, he's kind of past his prime. You have Kingpin making this one quip at him right when the episode starts, when he's patching him into the warehouse feed. And Silvermane's like, "We've actually caught the vermin." And Kingpin's like, "Yeah, you see him with your own eyes, assuming they've not failed you yet, old man." And I was like, "Ooh." I remember having a pretty good chuckle at that. And you have Silvermane deciding to take Kingpin down. And this was something I wanted to see at some point during the season, because you could tell when these two were interacting in part one that they were going to undoubtedly eventually compete with each other as to who could control crime in New York. And you've got Silvermane. He's thinking that he's got Fisk right where he wants him, but unbeknownst to Silvermane, Kingpin has, and I think he has cameras in there, Silvermane's headquarters. He got something bugged because Kingpin knows that Silvermane's about to hit him. And so now that he has his Insidious 6 ready to go, I love how he goes, "I will hit them harder." So he's getting everybody ready to take on Silvermane at his base of operations. So you've got this war between two very prominent crime lords in New York. At the same time, you have Peter, who's got to make an appearance to Aunt May. I think they're showing him how real the situation is, just how much danger she's in. They want him to cooperate with them. They're trying to take down Silvermane as well as Spider-Man. And so you've got Peter trying to reassure his aunt that he's sick, but he's going to be fine. And then you've got Chameleon after May heads for home, when she's assured that Peter's going to be okay. Chameleon in nurse form, she's like, "Well, you better lead us to Spider-Man, or next time she'll need the hospital bed." I'm like, "Man, you are one awful villain. I don't really like you very much, Chameleon." Also, about Chameleon, I don't know if I mentioned it in the last Spider-Man episode review, but he never speaks when he is just in his regular chameleon outfit. He always speaks when he is morphed into another character. You never hear the chameleon say anything, I don't think, in this incarnation. So the remainder of the episode is basically Parker attempting to come out on top of the situation. So he's got to lead the Insidious 6 to a building in which Spider-Man is supposed to show up. But before that, they actually make their attack on Silvermane's base of operations. And you have Chameleon, who turns into Hammerhead. He lures Silvermane down to the says there's an armored car in the basement, and then he cuffs him when they get him into the elevator, turns into Kingpin, and is basically mocking him. And it's a really cool scene, because I think up to this point, Silvermane has underestimated Wilson. But as I said in the previous episode review, when you slight the Kingpin, even a little bit, he's going to remember that, and he's going to hit you 3 times harder than you hit him. And in this case, he's hitting Silvermane 6 times harder than he was hit in the last episode, and it's pandemonium. And so he manages to capture Silvermane, and he's prepared to unalive the guy. He wants Silvermane to witness Spider-Man's destruction before he is unalived. So that's when they head to that building. And you have Peter, who has somehow gotten his hands on not 1, but 2 of Mysterio's hollow cubes. I think he had one in the first minute or so of the episode, and now he's got another one. And he's prepared to escape the clutches of the Six. And it's a big act-spanning battle. I think it starts toward the end of the first act of the episode. And then when you have Shocker getting a bit tired of Peter's mouth, he knocks him off a building. But then you have, of course, right in the nick of time, his powers beginning to return. And, I mean, they're not all the way back yet. And unbeknownst to Spider-Man, there's Silvermane there. And he's wondering, what the heck's that old guy doing here? What's his stake in this? Silvermane is, of course, he's got a public persona to keep, as well as Fisk does. So, I mean, he's trying to come off as a kind, mild-mannered old man to Spider-Man. He wants Spider-Man to save his bacon, of course. So I like that one part where Peter is asking him, what the heck are you doing here? What's your stake in this? And Silvermane's telling him, well, I'm very wealthy. They said they were going to hold me for ransom. So he's already trying to get out of the situation himself. Right now he needs Spider-Man, but of course later in the season he's going to go back to trying to dispense with him. But I love how Spider-Man has no idea of the depths of the criminal underworld yet. He's already saved Fisk's life. Now he's doing what a Spider-Man do, and he's attempting to save Silvermane. He doesn't even know who this guy is when he's out of the public eye. And he's just being, your basic friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, trying to save according to him, a kindly, sweet old man. And he, of course, starts to play the Six against each other. Because, I mean, even though his powers are coming back, they're not back all the way. So he has Rhino go ahead and, rip Shocker's electro suit with his horn. He's posing as the Chameleon, posing as Spider-Man. And so he's got Rhino doing that. And then after that's taken care of, he has Scorpion and Dr. Octopus start to fight each other. Because he knows Scorpion doesn't like to be called names, and Ock has been basically dissing him for the entirety of the two-parter. So by the time we're getting toward the end here, they're kind of getting sick of each other. And I think Peter knows this, and he uses that against them. He knows that these guys work better solo. So he's, in typical smarty pants Peter fashion, he is playing them all against each other. And so he's able to get Silvermane out of the building. Such a cool fight scene, though. We get to see all of the Six utilizing their gimmicks. I mean, we get to see a lot of tentacle action from Doc Ock. Scorpion is really going crazy with his tail and the acid. I don't really know what Mysterio's up to. I don't really know if he gets much of a chance to use his hollow cubes. Of course, the episode ends with Silvermane being okay. You have Kingpin, who's not wanting to go back to base. He's more than a little upset with being defeated by Spidey, of course. And this is when Silvermane realizes just how much of a threat Kingpin is, and he basically I think he's probably talking to Hammerhead. He lets him know that Kingpin has to be eradicated. I wish we could have seen more of Silvermane in season 2. We only get to see him in this two-parter, and then we see him again in Tablet of Time and Ravages of Time later in the season. I really would have wanted to see him in possibly Mutant Agenda and Mutant's Revenge later on. Maybe a little bit in the 3 episodes spotlighting Peter Parker's mutation, episodes 6, 7, and 8, I believe. But we only get 2 more episodes with Silvermane in season 2. I was under the impression when I saw this for the first time that this war between Silvermane and Kingpin was going to be more than just these 2 episodes and then the following 2. But it is a pretty good chunk of story. I think most of this season, rightly so, focuses on what Spider-Man's having to deal with, the changes he's going through. And so at the end of the episode, you get to see a bit more of Michael Morbius, who is voiced by Nick Jameson. And this guy, unbeknownst to me, because I hadn't yet got into the expanded universe from Star Wars, he did Palpatine in the Dark Empire audio drama and, Dark Empire 2, Empire's End. He also did Palpatine in the 2002-2003 Clone Wars animated series, the Genndy series. He voiced Palpatine in that. So it's really cool that he's also done Star Wars stuff too. I don't know much about him. I don't know if there are any interviews with him online as to what it was like for him to do Star Wars stuff. He seems like a really cool voiceover guy. I really loved him as Morbius, but he is so rubbing it in Peter's face that, you were late to your date with Felicia, so she's having dinner with me tonight and for the rest of the week. Goodbye, Parker. And I was like, oh my, somebody needs to slap this guy. He's so smug about it. But Felicia's awful too. She's also rubbing it in Peter's face, and I don't know if these two know, well, I mean, he really wasn't in the hospital, but it's like, guys, this guy, for all you know, was in the hospital. He's got something wrong with him, and you're just being giant scumbags to him. But okay, yeah, that's real mature. I love that scene, though. It's one of my favorites. And then you got Mary Jane showing up at the end of the episode. Peter's home. His powers are back. He says he feels great when he's talking to Dr. Connors, but Connors lets him know that things are really grim because the mutagenic factor in his blood has undergone another mutation. And the part of the episode that gave me chills was right at the end. He was like, how does he put it? While I can't tell you what you're mutating into, one thing's already clear. It won't be human. And you get this really dramatic, ominous orchestral music at the end. And of course, once again, when I saw the episode for the first time, because they mentioned it in part 1 about mutation, and he mentions it here in part 2, especially when he's going into whatever it is, it's not going to be human. I was thinking, giant spider monster? Are we going to get a giant spider monster? Giant feral spider monster? Because, I'd watched werewolf movies up to this point. Scared the pants off me as a kid, but I enjoyed the heck out of them. It's October as I'm filming this, as well as all future Spider-Man reviews. I'm going to be filming more in October. I've always been a big horror movie person. And I was hoping we were going to get something like that. I wasn't sure, though, because, it is a kid show. And I was like, well, they could avert the mutation at the last minute. We might not get very much of it. I was kind of thinking we were going to get that. I was like, nah, they're not going to do that. They wouldn't do that. They're not going to have him running around going nuts and, attacking whoever because he has basically no human mind left. They're not going to do that. Yes, they did. I love this season so freaking much. And I give this episode, I'd say 10 out of 10. So next time we're going to be talking about Hydro Man, Neogenic Nightmare Chapter 3. It feels a bit more like a one-off episode. I think it's the only one shot we've got. I mean, it does feel like a one shot, but we do get a bit of Parker trying to cope with what's going on with him, which I like. But it's basically him dealing with a new foe. You get to see him and Mary Jane kind of developing a deeper bond. She confides in him, tells him a bit about her past, things like that. So I can't wait to talk about that one. It's a pretty good episode. I don't know if I'd rate it as high as this one, but Hydro Man, man, he is a creepy, creepy villain. Makes me rather uncomfortable, actually. Always has. Just a real nutcase of a bad guy. He's voiced by one of my favorite voice actors, Rob Paulson, by the way. I think he did a great job, which we'll get into next time. So until then, I will hear you later. Pause video recording button.